It is the final chapter of Space Shuttle Discovery's 27-year space odyssey. Discovery is poised to make its 39th and final mission into space later today. Since its maiden voyage back in 1984, Discovery has become NASA's workhorse. It holds the distinction as the most flown spacecraft in history. The shuttle has traveled about 143 million miles and spent nearly a year in orbit. Discovery made NASA's return to space after both the Challenger and Columbia disasters, and in 1990 its crew launched the Hubble Space Telescope. For more on today's launch, CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood joins us from Kennedy Space Center. Bill, thanks for being with us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so Discovery's final mission is a long time coming. Why has NASA put it off since November?
Well, you know, this has really been a very complicated problem for NASA to resolve. Back on November 5th, they had to scrub a launch because of a problem with the hydrogen vent line. They quickly resolved that problem, but in the process they discovered small cracks in the shuttle's external tank. These cracks are in what they call stringers. They're kind of like vertical ribs that run around the circumference of the tank. And they had to figure out what was causing that and then fix it. And it turns out finding the cause was the real problem and what took them so long. And they now believe it's because of the specific alloy that was used, the really low temperatures of liquid oxygen and how they affect these stringers on this tank. And they basically put some stiffeners on there to make them less susceptible to stress release cracks, but it took them 3.5 months to get this problem resolved. They finally think it's ready to go, though.
Well, let's talk about this mission for a second. Talk to us about exactly what is on the agenda for this final mission for Discovery.
Well, you know, NASA only has 3 shuttle flights left before they retire the fleet, and the goal of all of these missions together is to deliver as much in the way of supplies, equipment, spare parts to the International Space Station to tide it over until new commercial unmanned cargo ships can be built to kind of pick up the baton from the space shuttle. So they really want to get it as well stocked as possible. There's 6 people on the station. It takes a lot of supplies to keep all those men and women functioning up there and comfortable. And so that's the goal. Discovery's flight's taking up about 10,000 pounds of cargo, supplies, equipment, spare parts, and also, Betty, the last U.S. module that'll ever be attached to the station, kind of a storage room they're going to stick on it. But when they get done with this mission, the station will finally be complete.
All right. You know, we do understand that the crew is also dropping off a unique robot at the space station.
Yeah, Robonaut 2. It's really an interesting experiment. It's a technology demonstrator, they call it. It's a humanoid robot. It's kind of like the upper torso of an astronaut, roughly the same size. It has 2 arms with fingers and, of course, a head with television cameras and all of that. And the idea is to find out if you can use robots to do some of the fine manipulative work that you do up in space in zero gravity. And in long range, it could be that technology like this could ultimately play a role. For example, if you had a fire on a space station or you had a dangerous situation, there might be times when you'd want to have a robot go into a situation rather than an astronaut. So that's all long-range stuff. This is kind of a first step, but it's an interesting first step.
Okay, let's step away from the technical for a second. Let's talk about the emotional side of this, because I'm sure there are some emotions about this being Discovery's last trip into space. How is the crew handling it?
Well, you know, the astronauts are so focused on doing their mission. They've been training for more than a year. It's very complicated, a couple of spacewalks. I'm not sure how much time they've spent thinking about it. I think the launch director, Mike Leinbach, kind of summed it up during a news conference yesterday. He said, you know, it's really going to sink home when Discovery gets back and you come to wheel stop on the runway and you know that it's flown for the final time. I remember watching Discovery's first flight back in 1984. You know how exciting that was to watch a shuttle take off on its first mission. And now here we are. This will be 39 missions later over all that time, making its last flight. A lot of emotions at the Kennedy Space Center. A lot of folks would like to see the shuttles keep flying. There's also a lot of folks who believe it's time to retire it and that it's the right thing to do. So it's a bittersweet situation for them, I think.
No doubt. Okay, so what is going to happen to Discovery once it does return?
Well, all 3 of the orbiters, Discovery, Endeavour, which goes up in April, and Atlantis, which flies in late June, they're all going to end up in museums. Certainly the Smithsonian has dibs on Discovery, everybody thinks. It's unclear yet whether the Smithsonian is going to have enough money to pay for it. It takes quite a bit of resources to haul a space shuttle anywhere and put it in a building where it can be seen. These are large spacecraft that you have to transport on the back of a 747 transport jet. But regardless of the finances, all three of these shuttles are going to end up in museums. It's really just a matter right now of deciding which ones. There's been a lot of applications, but they haven't made any decisions yet. We expect that later this year.
As you mentioned, the last shuttle mission is scheduled for June. What's on the agenda for that mission, and does NASA have anything special planned for that final mission?
Well, I'm sure they'll have something planned to commemorate the end of the space shuttle. You know, April 12th is the 30th anniversary of the first shuttle flight, and it's also coincidentally the 50th anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's first flight to become the first human in space. So there's a lot of, you know, anniversary type emotions here, and with that last flight, I'm sure they'll plan something special to send the shuttle off in high style. That flight's really unique though, Betty. There's only 4 astronauts on board because it is the last flight. There's not another shuttle to serve rescue duty if they got stranded in space. And so if that happened, the 4 astronauts would simply move into the space station and rotate home on Russian Soyuz spacecraft, but they really can't do that with more than 4 people. So it's a small crew, heavy on the cargo, because again, it's their last chance to get as much up there in the way of supplies and spare parts in that massive shuttle cargo bay before the fleet's retired. So it's all about resupply, it's all about the station. But as you said, I'm sure there's going to be some damp eyes around here when Atlantis finally rolls to a stop to end the program.
No doubt. Okay, CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thanks for being with us this morning.
My pleasure.